Right now, mega weapons are bursting into Ukraine. This was kept secret. Our forces are unleashing new power into the sky, the heavens thunder with vengeance. Partners are unexpectedly delivering, an explosion of emotions. Belgium is a new player on the world stage. You have to see this. Finland is stepping out of the shadows. The Western arsenal of weapons is moving to the armed forces of Ukraine. Asia can no longer hold back, putting an end to Russia. Now, a truly tough response. Did I finally take it? All this in our episode Hell Point. Belgium made an unexpected move, transferring F-16 fighter jets to Ukraine. A powerful boost to the arsenal of the armed forces of Ukraine that shocked everyone. Our air fleet has never been like this before. Everything happened suddenly but rapidly. Our ally knows how to surprise. Ukrainian pilots will be trained by the best. Weapons are flowing in like a river. Russia is reeling from such Western support. Belgium is going all out, and it seems this is just the beginning. What other surprises await Ukraine? We'll find out in just a moment.
F-35s have arrived in Belgium. The planes were flown in directly from the United States, where Belgian pilots had undergone training for several months. Now the F-35s will begin the stage of operational evaluation and integration before being put into service next year.
The F-35 is one of the best in its class. Moreover, the F-35A is a carrier of nuclear weapons. At the moment, by the way, the F-35s have been redeployed directly near the Russian borders.
In 2018, Belgium ordered 34 F-35A fighter jets to replace its fleet of F-16s. Later, the country decided to increase the order to 45 aircraft. The new planes will be based at the Lorraine and Kleine Brogel air bases. The complete replacement of the F-16s is expected by...
The year 2028 is a significant year, often discussed as a notable benchmark in the near future. It draws attention for various reasons, marking a specific point in time that holds considerable importance. That the program to modernize this country's armed forces coincided with the military technical assistance programs to our country, specifically in the transfer not only of F-16s, but also accordingly the entire range of military equipment stored in the Belgian Army's warehouses.
The Belgian government has repeatedly stated that the timing of the delivery of Belgian F-16s to Ukraine depends on the arrival of new aircraft. F-35s for the Belgian?
The Air Force, a critical component of national defense, has been closely monitoring global developments. In a significant move, the nation of Belgium has officially announced its firm intention to transfer a substantial number of its advanced F-16 fighter jets, specifically up to 30 of these formidable aircraft, to the nation of Ukraine. This crucial transfer is projected to be completed incrementally by the year 2028, providing much-needed aerial capabilities to bolster Ukraine's defense effort.
The year? Thank you. Which will make the country the largest donor of such aircraft. In April 2025, Belgian Prime Minister Bart De Wever announced that Belgium would deliver 2 F-16 fighter jets to the Ukrainian Air Force as early as 2025 and another 2 the following year. This is not Belgium's first aid to Ukraine. In May 2025, the Belgians prepared an aid package worth €1 billion for our country. It included military equipment and weapons, more than half of which are of Belgian origin.
Belgium also announced and delivered 20 modernized Cerberus air defense systems to Ukraine as part of its military assistance. In 2024, Belgium joined the Czech program for the transfer of 155mm artillery shells for the needs of the Ukrainian armed forces. At that time, the Belgian side allocated about €200 million to finance this program and purchased around 50,000 shells for the needs of the Ukrainian armed forces. In addition, the Belgian side analyzed and transferred Caesar self-propelled howitzers to the Ukrainian side, each worth €12 million.
Belgium is also investing in the training of Ukrainian specialists in technical maintenance within the F-16 coalition in cooperation with the Belgian defense industry. The country supports the launch of 70mm rocket production in Ukraine in collaboration with local companies. It is reported that Belgium will train Ukrainian F-16 pilots, prepare crews for future minehunter vessels, and conduct training in explosive ordnance disposal.
London is making a breakthrough. Military assistance to Ukraine is reaching a new level. Strike missiles, drones, armored vehicles, and ammunition are already on their way to the front. The Ukrainian armed forces are strengthening their positions, and the skies are under the control of our drones. Russia is in panic, while the Allies spare no effort or resources, reinforcing Ukraine step by step. This is only the beginning of a large-scale offensive. What will happen next, and what kind of power will the Allies unleash in the future? All of this in the following report.
The United Kingdom is strengthening Ukraine's airspace. Hundreds of missiles for air defense systems were delivered 5 months ahead of schedule. This was reported on the UK government website during the visit to Kyiv by the Minister for Defense Readiness and Industry, Luke Pollard.
The development of industrial partnerships is important in order to we could learn from their experience and jointly build the industrial base needed to defend the United Kingdom, deter our adversaries, and support Ukraine.
This refers to the lightweight multi-purpose element missiles, which are produced as part of the UK's military support program for Ukraine. This is a high-precision missile, 1.3 meters long, weighing only 13 kilograms with a range of up to 8 kilometers. It is equipped with both laser and infrared guidance systems, and its 3-kilogram fragmentation warhead with a proximity fuse makes it effective against both aerial and ground targets. The missiles can be launched from various platforms, ranging from ground-based launchers such as MANPADS, Stormer HVM, or Repeat Ranger air defense systems to helicopters and ships.
As illegal Russian aggression continues to escalate, European countries must unite and strengthen their support. Ongoing industrial cooperation, both with our government partners and international allies, remains the only way to ensure a safe and prosperous future for the people of Ukraine.
British support is not limited to just supplies. At the same time, a new large-scale phase of industrial cooperation has been announced. A package worth £1.6 billion sterling, or about $2 billion, for integrating LMM missiles into Ukraine's air defense system and developing joint production capacities. According to Luke Pollard, in 2025, the total volume of UK military aid will reach £4.5 billion sterling, or approximately $5.6 billion. This is a record amount for the entire period of support for Ukraine. Another key direction: the United Kingdom and Ukraine are launching joint production of interceptor drones. The project could start as early as the coming month. This line will be capable of producing about 2,000 interceptors per month. Such production rates are exactly what's needed to counter the mass use of Shahed drones and other kamikaze drone attacks. The first production lines will be located in the United Kingdom, but the project structure will be flexible, so that it can quickly respond to the needs of the front and, if necessary, relocate capacities closer to Ukraine. The British side promises to bring in research and development, expert knowledge, and modern manufacturing technologies that Ukrainian enterprises currently lack. This is not just a supply contract. It is an attempt to create Ukraine's own sovereign defense capabilities, technical equipment, support, training, and joint research and development chains. At the same time, the Netherlands also announced the signing of a memorandum on joint drone production with Ukraine, alongside the UK. European partners are forming industrial cooperation that is meant to function not through one-time deliveries, but systematically through a network of production, services, and training.
That is, if we're talking about the quality of drones, we have long since caught up with the so-called Russian drones, which are actually Iranian Chinese Shaheds. So the question was whether we could scale up production the way Russia, Iran, and China did. It turned out we could. So with the diving drone, we are now close to parity, not only in terms of the quality of the machines, but also in terms of their quantity, which is very important in this case. After all, this isn't the kind of war you can win with just precision strikes. Here, the mass scale of the strikes is important. Here you need, when we talk about figures like a 20% reduction in all of Russia's oil refining industry, you need operations on that scale. And so we are actually reaching those scales now.
Other allies of Ukraine are also preparing new steps of support. The United States plans to continue supplying modern weaponry, air defense systems, artillery, and cruise missiles, as well as strengthening Ukraine's defensive infrastructure. According to preliminary plans, in 2025 to 2026, the volume of military aid could amount to several billion dollars. Among European countries, Germany and France are preparing to supply armored vehicles and ammunition, as well as expanding their training programs for Ukrainian soldiers at their training centers. Poland and the Baltic countries are considering the possibility of providing additional equipment and conducting joint exercises to enhance the combat readiness of Ukrainian troops. In addition, the Allies are working on plans for the long-term integration of new air defense systems and artillery complexes, so that Ukraine can establish a resilient defense network and prepare for potential escalation from the Russian Federation. As part of humanitarian aid, there are plans to expand programs for infrastructure restoration, medical support, and the training of specialists to work in crisis conditions.
Finland is lending a helping hand to Ukraine as part of the Pearl Initiative. Helsinki is taking a decisive step, support that is resonating loudly across all of Europe. Partners are providing substantial assistance. The Russian Federation is urgently changing its plans on the front line. After the brazen orders from Russian generals, the occupiers are throwing themselves into battle with their last strength. Everyone is talking about this. The countdown has begun. You need to hear the exclusive details about this. Be the first not to miss out.
In the Zaporizhzhia direction, drones from the 422nd Separate Battalion of Unmanned Systems Luftwaffe are destroying a mobile Terek radar station. This is not an isolated incident. In this direction, Ukrainian drones are destroying a huge amount of the aggressor's equipment. The Partisan Resistance ATES reports that the Russian army is having major problems with its air defense systems.
Our sources in the air defense units of the occupying forces on the Zaporizhzhia front report a catastrophic state of their equipment. Sanctions, missile strikes by the Ukrainian defense forces on repair facilities and manufacturing defects have led to the mass failure of anti-aircraft systems, including the Tor air defense system. Due to the acute shortage of operational systems, the occupiers are forced to use tractors to tow the launchers into position. This practice makes the equipment extremely vulnerable and turns expensive systems into easy targets.
The Russian army does not count its losses, as it tries to get closer to Zaporizhzhia in order to strike the city and the logistics hub. And the city, with a population of over 500,000, is only a few dozen kilometers away.
The situation will continue to deteriorate. We have already seen bomb strikes on the city, and Russia is trying to get closer to a distance that would allow them to launch drone attacks as well. Currently, the distance from Russian-controlled territories to Zaporizhzhia is about 35 kilometers, and every 5 kilometers will worsen the situation for the population and the army's logistics. Michael Kaufman, military analyst.
To hold back the enemy and inflict unacceptable losses on them, Ukraine now needs military assistance more than ever. Already this week, Finland will deliver a new package of military aid. And Lithuania, Estonia, and the Netherlands will also provide funds for the purchase of additional weapons for Ukraine. And this is far from a complete list. Everything is happening within the framework of the Pearl program. This is the procurement of American weapons with funds from NATO partners. On October 15th, Pentagon Chief Pete Hegseth arrived in Brussels and demanded more weapons for Ukraine. At the meeting of NATO defense ministers and at the session of the Ukraine Defense Contact Group in Ramstein, he called on allies to allocate more funds for the purchase of American weapons. He emphasized that the Pearl Initiative is aimed at bringing peace to this war.
You achieve peace when you are strong, not when you use strong words or wag your finger in threat. You achieve it when you have strong and real capabilities that your adversaries respect. I believe that is exactly what NATO is doing. I believe that is exactly what the Pearl Initiative is about. That is why we expect today that more countries will donate, and even more than before. That they will purchase even more to provide Ukraine with what it needs for a peaceful resolution of this conflict. Under Hegseth, the head of the Pentagon,
as winter approaches, the Russians have returned to the tactic of mechanized assaults, especially in the Donetsk direction. This video is about how drone operators from the 93rd Mechanized Brigade destroy the occupiers' armored vehicles. But due to worsening weather conditions in Donetsk region, the use of strike drones is becoming more difficult. The Russians are trying to take advantage of this. For example, in order to capture Volodymyrivka and Sofivka, these are small villages in Donbass. During the offensive, the Russians used 6 tanks, nearly 40 armored fighting vehicles, and 40 units of motorized equipment.
Russian troops tried to break through the defense forces' lines, sending in equipment and infantry wave after wave. In the first echelon, mobile groups on motorcycles operated, followed by tanks and armored vehicles carrying troops.
According to the Ukrainian analytical portal Deep State, the Russian army's offensive in Ukraine has slowed down by almost half since September. One of the most important factors in the failure of the Russian army's offensive actions is the supply of weapons from our Western partners. That is why the initiative within the framework of the PIRL program for the procurement of American weapons by NATO countries is very important for Ukraine right now.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine today. Join us now.
Asia is buzzing with resistance against the Kremlin. Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, China, and Turkey are now sharply turning away from it. Tokayev is entering into direct confrontation, Beijing is keeping a cool distance, Ankara is dictating its own terms, and Tashkent is sending a clear signal. The era of Russian influence in the East has come to an end. Allies are leaving one by one, the empire is falling apart at the seams, and the Kremlin is gripped by panic and fear. And Putin doesn't know how to contain the chaos. Ahead of him lies the most painful awakening in history. What will it be like? The first details are coming up.
The visit of last hope. That's how the world media have dubbed Putin's trip to Tajikistan. After all, former allies, or more accurately, former vassals, are simply turning away from Russia.
In Russia even. In particular, it is important to note that this specific point requires our attention due to its significance and the impact it has on the overall context we are discussing. This aspect stands out and warrants a more detailed examination for a comprehensive understanding.
Bloomberg analysts report that the Kremlin's longtime allies in Central Asia and the Caucasus are establishing ties with China, the European Union, Turkey, and the countries of the Persian Gulf, seeking to protect themselves from further aggression by Moscow. The invasion of Ukraine is to blame for all of this. In this way, Putin has essentially declared that he is ready to use force to reclaim any territory that was once under Soviet influence. But such conclusions by Western media are far from unfounded. Today, Azerbaijan is clearly leading by example among former allies in its behavior toward Moscow. Refusing to attend Putin's parade, seeking other security guarantors, and most importantly, searching for new markets in international trade, all of this reflects Baku's current stance. Even Putin's confessions on the eve did not help. He admitted, for instance, that it was his air defense that shot down an Azerbaijani plane over Chechnya at the end of last year. It seems that even such statements can no longer save the relationship.
Frankly, what's left here? For the first time in the history of the post-Soviet space, we are witnessing how a country that is quite close to Moscow, a country that is quite loyal, and a country with a similar political regime, which did not take a different path, like Ukraine, Georgia, or Saakashvili, acts differently from what was previously considered the norm. That is, it publicly criticizes Russia, and not only criticizes, but backs up its criticism with corresponding actions, similar to how Russia acts toward the citizens of these and other countries.
Countries of Central Asia are increasingly openly declaring their desire to live independently. For example, just a few days ago, speaking at the UN, the leader of Kyrgyzstan stated that the country will now build its international relations without regard to Moscow.
I can confidently say that today the process of forming a new Central Asia has begun. Thanks to its unity, stability, and growing regional identity, it is taking an increasingly strong position in the system of international relations as an independent actor.
The United States is also adding fuel to the fire of Russian-Asian relations. For example, Donald Trump announced his readiness to pull yet another territory, Uzbekistan, out of Russia's sphere of influence. The head of the White House announced agreements reached between representatives of major U.S. businesses and the authorities of Uzbekistan. The companies will invest $1 billion in geological exploration and the development of deposits of critically important minerals in Uzbekistan. Trump also announced a major deal between Uzbekistan's Airway and the American corporation Boeing. The agreement, which provides for the delivery of 22 aircraft, is valued at $8 billion.
There are many areas in which Uzbekistan and the United States of America can expand mutually beneficial cooperation. I assure you, I personally guarantee the success of American companies operating in Uzbekistan. We will create all the necessary conditions so that American businesses feel confident and can fully take advantage of the opportunities in our market.
A sensational piece of news was also published the day before by Reuters journalists. Turkey will be able to meet its gas needs and therefore is reducing imports from Russia and Iran. Thus, Russia is losing its biggest client, one of the last in Europe. At the same time, Ankara plans to ensure its own supply by increasing production and boosting imports from the United States.
I think they might stretch this process out. They might partially refuse, they might substitute. Of course, Turkey, as always, in the style of its Eastern diplomacy, will buy this tail piece by piece or eat the elephant one bite at a time.
China also eats the elephant piece by piece. Thus, China has stopped supplying Russia with high-precision equipment, which Russian manufacturers are now openly stating. In particular, the owner of the company, Taati Promstan, Ildar Nureyev. Meanwhile, the head of Ukraine's National Security and Defense Council, Oleksiy Kovalenko, said that active negotiations are currently underway between Beijing and Washington regarding strategic rapprochement, which could ultimately have catastrophic consequences for Russia.
China is currently in no particular hurry to supply those very same crucial dual-use products to Russia, which Russia would indeed very much like to acquire and possess. Is in desperate need of. These essential items include advanced semiconductors, which are fundamental to modern technology, various critical components vital for manufacturing and assembly, sophisticated engineering equipment necessary for industrial processes, large specialized machines used for self-propulsion, such as engines and propulsion systems, dedicated machines for the precise production of ammunition, specific components required for the creation of gunpowder and other powerful explosives, and a wide array of other strategically important goods, all the way down to plates for essential body armor and protective gear for our soldiers. So in actual fact, there are significant bottlenecks and challenges everywhere within the supply chain.
Also, China, now acting in its own interests, is putting a spoke in Putin's wheel on Russia's path to forming gas alliances with Central Asia. At the beginning of this year, Gazprom's attempts to build domestic gas networks in these countries have been surprisingly unsuccessful. Analysts explain that this is by no means
Sometimes the roads aren't built properly, sometimes the guests aren't the right ones, sometimes something else goes wrong, or the political will is slightly adjusted in the Central Asian countries, which have started saying that they themselves are not opposed to supplying oil and gas to China directly without the mediation and assistance of Russia or Russian volumes. They don't need this in order to satisfy any of their own interests.
At the same time, to an ordinary observer, it might seem that there is no break in relations happening at all. The leaders of Central Asian countries periodically meet with Putin, and if you listen to the propaganda, it sounds like cooperation is only increasing. According to analysts, the main reason for such behavior remains the issue of migrants.
A very serious factor that forces Central Asia to take Russia into account and be more conciliatory, even in the current situation, is the fact that millions of workers are employed in Russia. This seriously alleviates social tension in the region. Because if a generation numbering in the millions returns, for example, in Uzbekistan it's 2 million, in Kyrgyzstan 1 million, and so on, if they return to their countries, those countries cannot provide them with enough jobs and income. This means that social discontent may arise in the country.
However, as soon as new ties with the West strengthen and gain momentum, migrants will begin to return to their homeland. After all, the nature of deals with Western partners is not about kickbacks and percentages, but about legitimate enrichment at the state level, not for individual officials. And the choice of whether to live in a sanctioned Russia or in your own country with more prospects will no longer be an issue.
Urgent, Ukraine is shocked. Erdogan has given the signal. Turkey enters the game with a lightning strike. This is a complete destruction of all forecasts. Ankara is taking a bold step. Cutting-edge weaponry is radically changing the rules of war. A powerful force is already in action. Turkey is putting pressure on the Russian Federation without any compromises. Moscow is in panic. Putin is exploding with rage. Is the end of Russia near? You will find out the details next.
Trump named Brian, the president who could potentially help to regulate Russia's ongoing war against Ukraine, a conflict that has caused significant global concern.
Putin respects him. And he is my friend.
Recep Tayyip Erdogan is actively involved in peacekeeping efforts to end Russia's war against Ukraine. He positions his country as a reliable mediator. The first negotiations after the start of the full-scale war took place in Istanbul in the spring of 2022. Several rounds of negotiations between representatives of the Kremlin and Ukraine after the resumption of direct dialogue in the summer of 25 also took place in Turkey.
Turkey has always advocated for a diplomatic path to achieve this goal. Now, after 3 years of immeasurable suffering, however, there has appeared...
This is a truly wonderful opportunity, a chance for something great.
We hope that the negotiations in Istanbul will open a new chapter.
Turkish mediation was also decisively instrumental in the Black Sea Grain Initiative, which is also known as the Grain Corridor, a crucial undertaking that was absolutely vital for global food security. The Turkish company Baykar continues to successfully integrate Ukrainian-made engines into its advanced combat drones, ensuring their continued operational effectiveness. At the Baykar plant in Istanbul, Ukrainian engineers are undergoing internships. In the future, they will form a team to work at the facility in Ukraine, which is currently under constant attack by Russia during its construction.
Iron concrete and buildings can be restored. What truly matters is our will and faith in this project. No missile can harm our friendship.
Turkey's support for Ukraine is not limited to Bayraktars and mediation.
And we have demonstrated our solidarity with Ukraine in practice by providing concrete assistance in political, economic, humanitarian, and technical spheres.
Turkey has closed the straits to the Black Sea for Russian warships, which significantly limits the aggressor's capabilities in the southern direction, and is providing Ukraine with missiles with a range of 20 to 70 kilometers for destruction of ground, mobile, and stationary targets.
On the 500th day of the war, which we will soon mark, the Ukrainian people are bravely defending the territorial integrity and independence of the country.
The year 2025 has changed a lot in Ankara's relations with Moscow. The Kremlin feels the distancing of an old partner, realizing that it has fewer and fewer allies. And now another blow from Erdogan. By the end of 2028, Turkey plans to meet more than half of its natural gas needs through domestic production and imports from the United States. The Kremlin understands that this means a loss of revenue and will lead to a reduction in supplies from Russia to a key European market.
We won't run out of gas. We have more gas than the rest of the world combined.
We have it, but does anyone need it? And it's not just about gas. At present, Turkey has made the decision to build 3 different military ships, which will take the country's navy another step forward. Turkey plans to develop one of the aircraft carriers together with Spain. Its size is approaching that of American nuclear aircraft carriers. In the summer of 25, Turkey joined the drone coalition led by Latvia and the United Kingdom. Currently, the coalition already includes 20 countries that are providing Ukraine with military assistance in this area. In 2025, the coalition members committed to allocate €2.075 billion to support Ukraine. And they have already contributed $180 million to the Joint Procurement Fund.
Just as we declared our rejection of the war 3 years ago when the conflict began, today we are determined to do everything possible to end the war through negotiations. In doing so, we continue our steadfast support for the territorial integrity, sovereignty, and independence of Ukraine.
Turkey has declared its readiness to participate in the reconstruction of Ukraine. Projects in the fields of energy, energy efficiency, social housing, and water supply are already planned.
Turkey is interested in ensuring that Ukraine controls the northern coast of the Black Sea, and accordingly that Russia does not appear there. In addition, Turkey's interest in the reconstruction of Ukraine is a huge plus. Turkey sees an opportunity to intensify the development of its military technical industry, considering that it can receive additional resources from selling its weapons. All of this as a whole creates a solid foundation for being interested in this process.
Turkey, as a NATO country, was ready to send its troops to Ukraine to guarantee the implementation of peace agreements. This initiative was condemned in the Kremlin. Officially, Ankara supports Ukraine's territorial integrity, but tries to maintain a balance between the sides. Turkey still tries to avoid joining Western sanctions, which, in its view, allows it to remain an effective channel of communication between the Kremlin and Ukraine.
That's all from me for now. This was me, Darina Hatskalo. Even more scorching news in our next episode. In the meantime, don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button. See you!